Open any history book, and it will tell you that gunpowder killed the armored warrior, that rifles and musket balls made plate steel obsolete, that the age of the mounted knight ended the moment reliable firearms arrived on the battlefield. They're not entirely wrong, but they're not entirely right either. Because in the early 1800s, on the bloodiest battlefields Europe had ever seen, men in full steel armor were still charging at full gallop into enemy fire. Not out of ignorance, not out of desperation, out of calculated, devastating effectiveness. To understand why, you need to understand the battlefield they were born into, the early 1800s. Smoke everywhere. Muskets accurate to perhaps 50 meters on a good day, and taking nearly a minute to reload after every shot. Infantry standing in tight formations, firing in volleys, praying the man beside them didn't break and run. Napoleon saw the gap. The moment infantry fired their volley, they were vulnerable. Reloading, hands shaking, smoke blinding them. If something hit them in that window, something fast, something heavy, something that didn't stop, the formation would collapse. The Cuirassiers were built to be that something. Getting into the regiment was not simple. Minimum height, 1.80 m, enormous for the era. You needed at least 10 years of military service, real service, campaign service, the kind that either breaks a man or hardens him into something else entirely. You had to have already proven in actual combat that you would not flinch. These men were then equipped with the cuirass, a breastplate and backplate of polished steel, together weighing around 10 kilograms. On their heads, the iconic crested helmet. In their hands, a straight, double-edged, heavy cavalry saber designed not for finesse, but for pure, destructive force. And beneath them, 700 kilograms of trained aggression. When Napoleon released the Cuirassiers, the sequence was always the same. A slow trot first, the sound of steel on steel, breastplates shifting, sabers leaving their scabbards, carrying across the field before the horses reached a canter. Infantry heard that sound before they saw anything. That was intentional. Then the distance closed. The trot became a canter. The canter became a gallop. And then several thousand kilograms of steel and horse and man were moving at full speed directly toward men holding single-shot rifles with shaking hands. Some fired. The shots hit. Some men fell. The rest kept coming. A cuirassier charge that broke through didn't just win a skirmish. It could decide a battle in minutes. They were Napoleon's hammer, and when they hit something, it stayed hit. But every weapon has a failure mode. For the cuirassiers, it came the moment the horse went down. A musket ball found your horse instead of you. 700 kilograms of animal collapsed at full gallop, and you went with it. And that 10-kilogram masterpiece of polished steel that had deflected 100 shots, it became a cage. A cuirassier on the ground could not get up quickly. The weight of the armor, the heavy boots, the saber, all of it worked against him the moment gravity won. He lay there in the mud like an overturned beetle while the infantry he had just ridden through walked back toward him. The same armor that made him invincible on horseback made him helpless on the ground. Protection and trap in the same piece of steel. The end came at Waterloo, June 1815. Wellington's infantry squares, men packed tightly, rifles pointing outward in every direction, ordered to hold their ground regardless of what came at them. The cuirassiers charged those squares repeatedly, circled them, probed for weaknesses. The squares held. And while the cavalry exhausted itself against infantry that refused to break, British artillery found its range. Cannon fire tore through horses and riders that muskets had failed to stop. Napoleon's campaign ended in that Belgian mud, and with it, the last armored cavalry charge in Western military history. Not because the men failed, because the world had moved past them while they were still moving through it. The cuirassiers were not a relic. They were a bridge between the armored knight and the armored vehicle, between medieval shock warfare and the mechanized assault that would define the next century. The tank did not invent the idea of protected, mobile, devastating force. It inherited it. Their breastplates are in museums now, still polished, still bearing the dents of the shots that didn't quite penetrate. The Iron Men are gone, but the principle they rode into battle on never left the field. If this story stayed with you, consider what the winged hussars of Poland were doing 2 centuries earlier on the walls of Vienna. A different kind of cavalry, a different kind of impossible. That video is next.